We've managed to reconnect with Al Pessin of the VOA in Brussels, who's monitoring President Barack Obama's visits and the G7 summit that's going on. Al, thank you for staying on the line with us. Technical issues there. Guess today is really not Technologies Day. But President Barack Obama has been busy in the last couple of days with his visit to Europe. How significant is his trip?
Well, it comes at a very significant time with the Russian annexation of Crimea having just happened a month or so ago. Russia's continuing to support these pro-Russian militias in eastern Ukraine that are stirring up a lot of problem and causing a lot of deaths. Ukraine has just had a presidential election, which I was there to cover, and their president-elect met with President Obama yesterday in Poland. So, yes, it comes at a very important time for relations between the United States and Europe, and relations within Europe and between West and Central Europe and Russia. So it was planned a long time ago, but it comes at a very significant moment.
And during that visit, on the sidelines of the G7 summit, he also met with Ukraine's new president, Petro Poroshenko, whom he described as a wise man. He believes he's the best man right now the Ukraine needs. But how important is this meeting he has with him? Because it sounds more like he's validating his presidency.
Well, yes, but I don't think President Obama had to really validate it. Mr. Poroshenko won about 53% of the vote in the first round against 17 or 18 other candidates, so it was a pretty significant mandate that he was given. And the international observers all declared that it was a free and fair. President Putin recognized the results of the election, so I don't think President Poroshenko particularly needed that kind of validation. It is continuing support from the United States and from the European Union for the reforms that he's going to make when he's inaugurated in about a week. He needs economic help. He needs military aid, which he's going to receive non-lethal aid like radios and body armor and perhaps vehicles. And he just needs political support to stand up to Russia, which seems to be trying to reassert its old sphere of influence among the former Soviet republics.
All right, and speaking of Russia, President Barack Obama had some really strong words for Russia's influence in Ukraine, but both leaders will be at the 70th anniversary tomorrow, the 70th anniversary of the D-Day landings. What sort of mood would it be like tomorrow, having both of them standing side by side?
Well, it's not going to be the warmest meeting that they've ever had. I don't think they're actually having a formal meeting, although they'll see each other and they'll probably chat. And President Obama said today that he will be, as he always is, very frank with President Putin, and Putin is also frank with Mr. Obama, I'm sure. So they may exchange a few words, but they've spoken on the phone several times since this crisis began, and they're very familiar with each other's approaches. Equally interesting is the fact that 3 of the senior West European leaders will have sit-down meetings with Mr. Putin. They support the U.S. policy, but they all have slightly different nuances in their policies. They have different economic relations with Russia, and they may have a somewhat different view of how to try to get Russia to moderate its behavior and go back to the sort of relationship that we had before. And I think President Obama would acknowledge that there is some value in maintaining these sort of meetings with President Putin so that there's not a sort of a pretty total cutoff of contact. That's why President Obama continues to talk to him, and that's why he hasn't objected to the fact that the European leaders will be meeting with Mr. Putin. But isn't it interesting how the United States was an ally of the Soviet Union in World War II 70 years ago, then went through decades of Cold War, then the Soviet Union fell, and the West had pretty good relations with Russia for a couple of decades, and now what Mr. Putin has decided to do, not respecting established borders, going back to a sort of a Soviet-style behavior, has created this new freeze in relations, and they're all going to be together on the beaches of Normandy commemorating the way things were 70 years ago. So there's quite a rich mix of things going on there.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Al, for bringing that analogy out for us. Thanks a lot also for keeping an eye on the meeting in Brussels. Al Pessin of the VOA in London.